Hello everyone, I welcome you all in this today's session. Let's start with the agenda. What all things we are going to cover in today's video. So the first thing first, we are going to start with understanding the different types of data, where you have your structured data, your semi-structured data, and your unstructured data. So we'll be looking into each kind of data. Then we will start our journey on Azure. So we will be creating your first storage account. We'll understand what are the features and properties of Azure Storage, and then we will look into the Blob versus ADLS, right? So ADLS is nothing but your Azure Data Lake Storage. So it will be a very informative session for you all. So let's start the session. Before we begin the video, a quick information guys, if you are planning to start your career or switch your career in data engineering domain, we at Prepza Learning offers the best data engineer program where we cover all the skills which are mentioned in job descriptions, starting from Python for data engineering, data warehousing fundamentals, Azure Cloud, Fabric Cloud, PySpark, Databricks, Snowflake, Airflow, and Kafka. The best part is it's a live online weekend training sessions. Check out the program details for more information. Let's start the video.
What is a storage account? By the name, it says it is meant to store the data. What kind of a data, right? That's where we'll talk about data now, right? There are typically different types of data that you encounter in a day-to-day life. Okay, that can be structured data. Right? Structured data. What is a structured data? Structured data is like which has a proper schema, right? When I say schema, imagine you have a table, right? The table withhold some information called customer table, or is something like you can have images, movie files, executables, all that things comes under unstructured data. Okay, so now in current traditional data warehousing or a traditional modern data warehousing, you get to deal with all these varieties of data. Okay, then if you're dealing with these many varieties of data, you need to have one service which would take care of providing a capability to store all these different varieties of data. Okay, and that something, that service which is available is in Azure is storage accounts. Okay, that is called a storage account. So now storage account is something which is capable of capturing a structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data, or whatever. Okay, it can store any type of data. So now what is Azure Storage Account? Azure Storage is something, it's like scalable system. It's a massive scalable system, right? Anything in Azure, any service in Azure, if you take, it supports few features, that is scalability, availability, performance, right? So by default, you should assume anything, any service in Azure have all these features, right? It's not only this, it has all the services will have all of these features. Okay, secure, it's very much secure, it's very much scalable, it's very durable in nature, you can easily access them, all that stuff by default you get to see here. Okay, yeah, so this is of a storage account. Instead of showing some ppts, let me go to the Azure portal and create one storage account, and I'll show to you what are the features that storage accounts provide to us, what are the very important properties that we need to think of. Okay, so let me go to my Azure portal back. Okay, so now let's go for a storage account. Right? I already have many storage accounts, but I'll show to you how to create a service. So far we haven't created any service in Azure. This is our first time we are creating, and the creation process is very straightforward and very similar for the any other service that you create in Azure. Okay, if at all I show to you one, the other thing should be very straightforward. Okay, now I am trying to click a create button. Try to create any service or a resource. You need to provide some basic information. What is that basic information? To create a resource, you need to have a subscription, and then you need to have a resource group. Only under this resource group you can create a resource, right? You need to enter the subscription, you need to enter the resource name. Here, what is the name of the resource that you wanted to create? What is the region, whether you wanted to create in India, US, or East US, or whatever. And this is about the performance, right? I'll talk about it. And then the redundancy. These are the major things that you need to remember. And this particular stuff is remains same for any of the resource. These four steps remain same for all the resources: subscription, resource group, the name, and region, right? And then there are extra things that differ from service to service. Okay, based on the service, they have their own extra property that we need to define well while creating. That we'll talk about when we create individual resources. Okay, so now let's say I have only one subscription. That subscription is auto populated. If you have many subscription, you click the drop down and you select the subscription. And then there are many resource groups. If at all you want to create a new resource group, you can create, right? For now, let's say I wanted to create in this resource group, right? What is the name of it? So I can give any dummy name. For now, I'll say, right? So this is my storage account, right? And now region, right? So there are n number of regions where Azure has its footprint. Okay. Now tell me, what is the region I should select here? What do you think? Right? Region plays a very important role, right? But if at all I ask you this question, what do you think? Which is the region I should select? Someone is saying Asia, correct? So the correct answer for it is, it's not closer to me. I say it's closer to the users. You getting my point? It should be closer to the customers. Okay, why is that, right? Now let's say I'm a developer. I'm trying to create something for the users in US, right? I work for an US related company. I sit in India. I should not create a storage accounts in India because I'm creating this for the users of US. So let me create this storage account in a region which is near to the users. I hope you know why do we do that. But for folks who are understanding what is latency, latency is something, if at all I say in a technical words, a low latency, that means I'm able to access that resource at a very faster rate. Low latency is something I'm able to access the resource at a faster rate. Higher latency is something where the performance of it is not that great. Okay, we should always aim for less latency in any service that you create. So now I go for east to west. Okay, and again I'll take this word as well. Not all services are available in all the regions. When I say that, most of the services are available in most of the regions. Like currently, like if at all you see, Azure is also expanding its market. Okay, Azure is also expanding its market. So they're trying to add new regions in Africa or some other regions as well, right? So there, as they're starting, you cannot find all the services there. Slowly, they are increasing their services. But predominantly, the major resources are available in all the regions that you don't need to worry about. Okay? What is redundancy? That is called data replication, which we spoke yesterday, right? So now let's spend 10 minutes to understand the concept of redundancy and what are these four configurations available to us. Okay. So now assume this particular box. This is east US. The entire orange color outline that you're seeing is a east US. Okay. In what is east US? East US is a region. Okay. Under a region, there will be a number of zones. What is a zone? It's a logical separation, right? Like for example, in India, there is a state. Inside state, there are many districts. Like however, in the similar in other countries as well, there's a country and there are states, right? You can assume like that. Let's say in East US, there are four regions, right? If you ask me where are this sorry, in East US, there are four zones. If you ask me, hey, where are these zones? That is a black box to us. You don't know where are these zones deployed. You don't know that. Okay, right? There are four zones: zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4. Assume, assume. And you don't even know how many zones are there. That's totally black box to us. Everything Azure only takes care. Okay, that's totally black box to you. When I say a black box, you cannot see in very with your naked eye is what I meant. Okay, and each and every zone there will be few data centers. Each and every zone there will be data centers. What's wrong? Yeah, I took the other sketch. Okay, each and every zone there can be n number of data centers. I'm just writing 4 data centers, but there can be many data centers. Again, that is also black box to you, right? And each and every data centers, you can assume it's like a supply of services, okay, where your actual service goes and sits, right? So you can assume it's like a building with a lot of power connections, racks, power racks, right? It's the smallest piece of a storage, right? When you create a service, it gets stored in one data center, either here or here or here or here. It can be anywhere, which you don't know, but it will be in east to west, right? This is the hierarchy of a region, a zone, and a data center. Correct, guys? Everyone with me? Yes, no, maybe? Response, please. Everyone with me so far? Great, great. Okay. Now, if at all I go for locally redundant storage, let's say I wanted to create the storage account by choosing locally redundant storage. What that means is they will create this service and replicate this service thrice. Remember this properly. When I use locally redundant storage, they will replicate this thrice. When I say that, let's say you have one CSV file stored in this account. Azure will create 3 replicas and it would store that replicas in the same data center. In one in this rack, one in this rack, one in this rack. Not all will be stored in the same rack. You can assume it's like in a house, it would be stored in the different buildings, sorry, different rooms. Okay, where house is a data center, room is like a rack, one rack. Now, if at all you see the data is replicated thrice at some point of time, there is some problem where the power supply or network is not proper in this rack. You don't need to worry about it. Your data is properly secured and you can easily access from the other rack. If this is also gone, no need to worry. You have the other rack. If this is also gone, yeah, then you won't be able to see the data. Okay. Now, I will only take your questions and answer on behalf of you. Let's say for some reason this is down, right? Then you don't need to worry about it. You don't even know that there is one rack and which is down for maintenance. You don't even know. That is everything is black box. That the moment that particular rack went for a task, Azure will directly shift the request to the other rack. You don't even know that. You will be known only when entire data center went for a toss. Let's assume there is one entire building collapsed, and when you're trying to read the data, it is not happening. Then only you should be knowing that there is a problem with entire data center. Okay, locally redundant storage is something where it tries to replicate your data thrice in a data center. Okay, so now I hope everyone is aware of what a data center is and what is locally redundant storage. And then let's go with zone redundant storage. So basically, the replication strategy is same. Any file you create, it replicates in 3 places. Now, in this case, when I go for zone redundant storage, one file will be in somewhere in this particular zone, somewhere either here or here or here or here. The second copy will be placed in other zone. The third copy will be placed in the other zone. In this case, in the previous scenario, if you observe, if a data center is gone for a toss, then there is no way I can get my data. Now, in this case, if data center is gone, forget about the rack. If entire data center is gone, I can get from the other zone. Exactly. When one zone is down, I can get from the other zone. That is the benefit I'm getting here. Okay. Now, what is the other one? Geo-redundant storage. So when I say that it replicates the data in other region, you need to remember one important concept here. Zone redundant storage is equal to LRS in primary region. When I say that, if at all you create any copy by choosing this replication, this is the primary region. No, this is primary region. This is secondary region. Here it will act as a LRS, as in it will store your copy thrice in the same data center, like this, in the same data center, 3 times. 1, 2, 3, 3 replicas. Okay. In the primary region. In the secondary region, in some zone, in some data center, you will have one copy. Just you'll have one copy. So total, you can assume there are 4 copies. In primary region, there are 3 copies. In secondary, only one copy. Okay. Now, the second question of yours, which I wanted to answer, then what is the region that it will opt? Whether it will opt India, whether it will opt America, or which one? So the other region, and you don't have the capability to opt. Only you have the flexibility to opt to primary region. The secondary region, Azure decides on its own. If you ask me how it decides, it would decide any other region of its own having a radius of like 100 miles. In 100 miles of radius, it will choose one region. Okay. And if at all there is nothing in 100 miles, it will expand its radius and it will go. Again, don't think it go extreme poles apart. Someone in North Pole and somewhere in South Pole. It will never go that way. Okay. So this is called zone redundant storage. Okay. Then what's the last one? It is GZRS, Geo Zone Redundant Storage. The concept is very simple. Geo Zone Redundant Storage is, it acts as a ZRS in primary. In each and every zone, you'll have one copy, and in secondary, you'll have one. Okay. So the other thing is GZRS. Okay. So now that I spoke about 4 things. Okay. So SLAs per zone remains the Azure has its own SLAs per region, right? Based on the region terminologies and all it says, but you can make sure it will be minimum 2 nines. 99.99 is for sure. There can be a case for a few regions, there can be 99.39s, but for sure you will get 4 nines, which is 99.99. Okay. Geo zone redundant, as in there will be 2 regions. In first region, data gets replicated thrice in each and every region, each and every zone, and it gets replicated once in the secondary region. You cannot have more than 3 Ben. By default, Azure provides 3. That's it. You cannot have more. But again, think about it. Now, why do you need more than 3, 4, 5, 6? Imagine, right? At least, if at all you ask me, 3 is also a good number. But at least you should appreciate Azure that they have considered 3 replicas. Okay. So this is about replication. Okay. So now let's talk about the other stuff. Okay. Here, all these are the, what do I say? All these are the toppings. If at all you offer a pizza and you can have more toppings, right? But that doesn't mean you can have a pizza without toppings. You can still have a pizza without any toppings. Am I right? In the similar way, these are the mandatory stuff you need to have for a storage account. Now, what I'm going to talk in next 10 minutes, that is still okay if you have it or don't have it. Okay. Now let's go to advanced. Require secure transfer for REST API operations. So if at all you wanted to have a secured operation for REST APIs, you go for it. Right? All these are the features. Allow enabling anonymous access, right? If at all you wanted to enable anonymous access on individual containers, you can go for it. As in, until unless you specifically give access, they cannot access it. So it's like a security feature they are giving, right? Enable storage account key access, right? They'll have a specific key for each of the account, which I'll show it to you, right? That is called access. So all these are the extra features, right? TLS version is like this is a secured version. When your data gets transmitted from one place to another place, a networking will follow few protocols, right? Version 1.2 is the latest protocol where this is called transport layer security. Okay, this will make sure your data is secured and no one can try to crypt your data or encrypt your data. So that's the option they're going for 1.2. So like this, there are good amount of features that you can scope for, where I'll talk about very important feature, right? I'll come to this hierarchical space, which is very, very important that you need to understand. Before I talk about this, I need to talk about access tier, right? What is this access tier? This is very important. Hear me out. Okay. So why did I put this table is for you to understand what are access tiers. Okay. So this is a tier. Okay. What are tiers? I'll talk about it, but there are 4 tiers in Azure in a storage account, which would determine your access cost, right? The first tier is hot. The second tier is cool. You don't see the other tiers, but you can change that as well. I'll show it to you. The fourth one is cold. The last tier is archive. Okay. So these are the 4 tiers that you get to see in storage account. Okay. So now what is this hot, cold tier? Which one I should opt? Okay. If at all you wanted to access your data very frequently, right? Imagine you have a data and you access the data very frequently. Okay. So that scenarios, your access cost is less. When I say down arrow, the access cost is less. Okay, because why this Azure is giving you a feature is it is trying to minimize your cost. When I say hot tier, there is some data like employee data where you access very frequently, every day once or weekly once you access this very frequently. So as you're trying to access the data very frequently, it would be good. It would be good if your data is. It would be good if your access cost is less. Correct. And on contrary of it, the storage cost will be more. Okay, you got this right. Any data that you are trying to access very frequently, you choose hot tier for it. When you choose hot tier, access cost is less and storage cost is more. Okay, in all these cases, access cost will be more, storage cost will be less. Okay, now let's talk about these 4 tiers. What is cool tier? Right, at any point of time, if at all you feel I don't access that data very frequently, but I cannot delete the data. I need to store it. So you store it in a cool tier. When you store in it a cool tier, you access it very, I mean, you don't access it very often. You access it at 30 days once or 20 days once or monthly once. So that's a very less time you access. So that's the reason access cost is more. But you store it for a longer time. So your storage cost is less. Okay. This cool and cold are almost similar, but the only difference is when you try to access the data at a cold tier, you would get the data at a very faster rate. Okay, understand the difference, right? You store the data, if at all you are trying to store the data in cool or cold tier, that is equivalent to you don't access the data frequently, So I'm storing it here. When you store in cool tier and when you try to access the data, it will take some time because they would put it at somewhere, assuming that you won't access it, right? When you try to fetch the data from a cool tier, the performance would be bad. But let's assume no, even though I put it in this tier, my performance should be good. Then you go for a cold tier. That's the only difference between cold and cold. And what is archive? Very easy to understand. You can assume it's like an offline tier where you will have some years together data, like 4 years of data, 5 years of data. Like for example, Amazon, if at all you have ordered a product like 10 years back or 5 years back, you can still go to your previous orders and you can check, am I right? Even if you imagine, for that you keep scrolling down in Amazon portal, it keeps loading and getting it right. Just like a week back orders, you get it very fast. I'm not sure how many of you observed it. Try it when you go home, go to Amazon and go to your previous orders, like 1 month data, and the moment you scroll you get it very fast. But whereas you go for try to get a product details with that you have ordered 5 years back or 6 years back, it will take some time. It keeps loading because it needs to fetch that data from the archive tag, right? And if you ask me, have you ever gone to Amazon portal to get the details of a product which you purchased 5 years back? Hardly no. Am I right? Hardly no, right? But still, they cannot delete that data. You never know. Amazon never knows that when you try to get the details. Okay, right? I use this. I see this problem yearly once. Okay, my father will ask me to recharge the TV yearly plan because we take yearly plan because the cost is less, right? And I don't even know the which plan I took exactly 1 year. So what I do, I go for my Amazon. I keep scrolling down, like what is the thing that I have ordered 1 year back. I get to see the details, and then I'll book the same plan again, right? So that's where the archive comes into picture, right? So Ben, I mean, it's not cost. It's like Azure is helping us. Imagine a situation where they have given you hot tire, right? I mean, it's not that great, right? You'd be end up paying more and more for storage. But whereas if they are giving you these many options, Azure in a way is helping you, which you don't understand it directly. But think a lot when you have this all configurations, by choosing it significantly which one to go, you will definitely save a lot of money. In a way, a cloud computing architecture is helping us to save the money, right? So these are the configurations for you, right? So hot means frequently used. So access cost should be more. You are right. Access cost should be more. But Azure is thinking in terms of the customers. Instead of me charging them, let me charge them less. You got me, Bhargavi? Right? Azure is thinking in terms of their customers. My customers are trying to access the data very frequently. So let me give that pricing strategy less for them, right? That's the concept here, if you understand. You can never have any fixed recurring cost. There is nothing like that. There is one more thing which I wanted to cover. There's a concept called delete, soft delete. What is that? At any point of time, if you're at all you deleted a blob, let's say by mistake you have deleted, right? But you don't need to worry about it. Azure would keep the blob for next 7 days. You can increase this day as well. The more you give the number, the obviously the pricing is also like that. This is called soft delete for blobs. This is for containers. This is for files. So like that, they have some extra things for you that you can think about it. And then there is versioning as well. What is versioning? If at all I change a file, it will track that version, right? Let's say I have changed a file from Ajitesh to Gupta. It will track that version 1, it was Ajitesh. Version 2, it was Gupta. So at any point of time, if at all you feel, okay, there's a problem at second version, I wanted to go to revert to version 1, that is possible. Everything I'll show that to you in live. Okay, so these are the high level concept that is possible in Azure. Now, if at all I just review and create, it will create, but I've already created one storage account. Let's go there. right? The moment you create a storage account, this is how it looks, and the name of the storage account is Ajit Blob here. Okay, I hope everyone is with me so far. Now let's try to understand it. Now, if at all you see in a storage account, there are typically 4 options. Entire storage account is divided into 4: containers, files, queues, tables. We'll go step by step, right? What is a container? Container is like a folder. Okay, you can have n number of folders, and you can create n number of files there. So now let's say I'll create a folder. I will say uh, 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 this is a folder I'm trying to create, and there are 3 options, anonymous options. I'll talk about that as well. For now, let it be private, so no one can read it without any explicit access. Okay. Now that I have created a folder, now I will try to upload some data into it. So now let's say I wanted to upload this file. I have uploaded this file, right? So if at all you wanted to see what is the file that you have uploaded, click on this. You can download it or whatever. You can do that. Okay. So now here we need to understand few concepts. Here I have uploaded the file. Now, what is the path, right? So now let's say yesterday we were talking about service to service. Let's say you wanted to access this file. How will you access? You need to have a path. What is the path of the file? This is that path. URL of the file. Click this one. You see this? This is the path of the file. What is the path says? Ajit Blob is a storage account dot blob. Here, what exactly is a blob? Blob is called a file. In a technical term of Azure, whenever I say blob, it is called a file. Any file that you upload, that can be anyone. It can be a movie, it can be an image, it can be a CSV file, it can be an Excel file, it can be a Parquet file or anything. Everything it is considered as a blob here. Okay. So this is the root path. Whatever I have highlighted is a root path. And then it's a folder. And then it's a file. Okay. In examinations, if at all you take any certifications, you get these questions as well. I have uploaded a file under this folder. This is the name of the file. What is the correct path of the file? And they'll give you 4 options, right? And that's how you need to select which is the correct option. First, it will be storage account name, and then whether it is a blob or whatever, and then the folder name, and then the file name. That's the path it follows. Okay. Now, let's talk about access level. If at all you click this, if at all you click this, current access level is anonymous, private. What do I mean by that? So for example, if at all I take this file and if at all I give it to you, if at all I run this file, can anyone try this? What you're getting? Hope you should be seeing the same error what I'm seeing. Same. As in, none of you have access to this particular file. Okay, because I have made it as anonymous. If at all I change the access to blob, anonymous read access for blobs. So now with that link, anyone can access is a point, right? So preferably people will go for anonymous access, which is a good secured way. That's one thing you need to remember when you try to create the files. But if at all, okay, that's one thing, right? Now, if at all you see this, the tire is hot. What does that mean? You can access it very frequently. The access cost is less and the storage cost is more. And if at all you wanted to change the tire, click this, you get 4 options. By default, all files, when you create, it will go to hot tire. Until unless you change it, it won't change. Okay, great. And now what I wanted to talk is, yeah, now let's open this. You see an option called versions. Currently there are 0 versions, as in I haven't created any. What I mean is I haven't modified the data yet. Now let's say I go to this file, I can edit the file inline and I'll make it 13. I'll make it save. Now I go to this version. You see this version? A new version has been created. Okay. Now I'll go to this file. I'll make it to the first one. I'll make it the second one. I'll make it to India. I'll make it save. Automatically the version gets created. And if at all I view this version, if at all I see this version, in this version, you won't find the change I did for India, country name to India, you don't find, because that is at this version. Okay. Now, for example, currently you see this version, what you're seeing India and 13. Okay. Now let's assume the change that I did the second time is not supposed to be done. Then what I can do, I can go to this file and I can go to versions. I can click this and I can make current version. As in this change would get overridden and make the current version. And it comes a new version now, right? Now, any alteration you do a file, it is captured as a version. Now, if at all you go to this and try to edit the file, you won't see India. That's the feature that storage account provides you. Okay. Then snapshot. Let's talk about snapshot. Version is something that happens automatically. Did you any file that you change at any point of time, it will create a new version. Okay. At any point of time, if at all you wanted to go to a previous version, you can go. But what is a snapshot? Snapshot is like you do it manually. At any point of time, you wanted to have a snapshot. Now, let's say in our organization, we'll have releases, right? Every month on month, we'll have a release. And after a new release, let's assume the data gets changed drastically. Okay. So before you go for a new release, there's a habit, they create a snapshot of it before a release. So now it is the current snapshot. After a change, after a major release that happened, the data gets changed. Now, at some point of time, if at all you want to go to the previous snapshot, you can easily click this and you can make it as promote snapshot, right? Again, you don't need to scratch your head like crazy. The only difference between versions and snapshots is versions are automatic in nature, whereas snapshots are manual in nature. Snapshot is something if you want, you go and create. Version is like automatic. That's the only difference, right? So there is no limit as such, Sony. Like you can create as many versions as possible, right? Should be a limit on a higher level, but you don't need to worry about it. Is what I would say. It's more cost. Again, imagine each and every version. If at all you are going for LRS mode, it gets replicated thrice, right? So that's the reason more versions you go, it would cost for it as well. If no, nothing like that. That is taken care internally, Vijay. Even though there's a lot of conflict, Azure has a capability to resolve that and it will have a one proper version. Let's say like you and me are trying to modify the file, it will have one version for you and it will have one version for me. There's no much difference. Only it's manual and it is automated. Okay. So that is with respect to versions and snapshots. Okay. Then no, you cannot edit snapshots and you cannot edit versions as well. That is not at all possible. Only thing is you need to download, make some changes, and if at all you wanted to upload, you can do that. Okay. And one last thing that you need to remember is there's a concept called acquire lease. As in, what is the use case of this concept, right? So there is a proper use case. So first of all, let's understand. One second. Okay, leasing, right? Okay, you have a file and you don't want to allow. Let's say you have a critical data, right? And you are changing some metadata, right? Which happens very rare. Just take a hypothetical scenario, and you don't want any of them to update the data at that point of time, right? Then you acquire a lease. So now successfully acquired lease on the following blobs. While this lease is active, you must include the lease ID with any request to write to this blob or renew. Okay. Now some service is trying to update this data. Now you cannot do that. You cannot at all do this, right? Now, for example, I go here. If someone is trying to edit the data, you see this, it is grayed out. I cannot do that because leasing is something like locking. Now your file is locked until unless you break the lease, you cannot do that. You cannot update it. Manually, you can acquire and break via UI. But in a real-time scenario, there are APIs for you to do where you need to tell you need to acquire it. But any point of time, if at all, let's say you acquired it, you acquired a lease. Once you acquire a lease, let's say I want to update the metadata. I'll say I'll acquire the lease. And what did I say? When I acquire the lease, no one can update the data. But I need to update the metadata. Then how will I do that? In a traditional coding manner, you need to pass this lease ID, and that's how the authentication happens, saying that okay, he is the person who has acquired the lease and he is passing the lease ID. So then let me allow for him to update the data. That's the concept. Okay. But in any of my okay, right? So that's a scenario of acquiring lease and the break list. So in a very layman terms, it's like putting a lock on your file so that no one can update your data until unless you break the lease. Okay. So that's the concept of acquiring and break lease, right? And if at all you see in this particular overview tab, all these options are available here for you. Here versioning is enabled. At any point of time, if at all you wanted to disable, you can disable it, right? At any point of time, if at all you change any of the properties that you created at the beginning, you can come to overview tab and you can delete it. Okay. And here, if you see, I have opted for GRS. My primary region is East US, my secondary region is West US. That's where the replication happens. Okay. This is the geo redundant storage. This is a subscription ID, right? This is the resource group where I created. Okay. So all these are the, what do I say? Properties of my storage account. Okay. So that's the concept of storage accounts. Okay. So now let's try to understand what is hierarchical namespace. You remember this? I said I'll talk about this hierarchical namespace when I finish explaining the storage account. Like for example, whenever you create a storage account, you have an option to tell whether you want hierarchical namespace or not, which is here, right? Whenever you click this option, then this storage account then this storage account will become like Azure Data Lake Storage. People keep on talking ADLS, ADLS. The moment you make this enable, then this storage account is not just blob storage. So far, whatever we spoke about is just a blob storage. I'll talk about the differences as well, but so far it was just a blob storage. With this change, just with this change, it became Azure Data Lake Storage. Okay. So now let's understand deep dive on what exactly is ADLS, Azure Data Lake Storage. Okay. So now let's understand the first thing. Okay, if at all we talk about the differences for you to understand it properly. This is blog. Okay. So ADLS is something only when you enable that storage. Previously it was blob. So now let's try to understand the differences. Blob is like a flat architecture. I'll talk about what is flat. Whereas ADLS is a hierarchical namespace. So when I mean that, if at all you go to a blob, you go to a container, there is a folder. You go to here. Now let's say I go to here. Do you see adding? Can I add a container here? I cannot add a container. I cannot add a folder inside a folder in blob. Whereas in ADLS, I can create that. Like for example, I have ADLS as well, which I created long back by just enabling that. If at all you go to this, you go here. Again, you see add directory. I can add multiple folders inside a folder, which is not an option in blob. That's the first difference. Okay. The second difference is it's a general purpose storage. At any point of time, someone, I think Arun or someone asked, hey, you are uploading very small files. If at all I wanted to upload a very huge files which is having metadata and all, then blob is not the option. For that, you need to go for ADLS. This is for general purpose storage. If at all you wanted to store some basic information, or it has some amount of data which is easy to access, you can go for blob. But if you're looking for big data, big data workloads, what is big data here? If at all you are having some data which is very huge, like petabytes of data, billions and billions of rows, then the option is ADLS. Okay. When you store big data kind of an environment in ADLS, it is optimized in such a way that where it would store the data in a compressed way, where you can easily read the data and easily write the data at a very good latency. ADLS is meant for big data workloads. The second one is security. When I say that, let's say I have 5 folders. Folder 1, inside that I have one folder 2, inside that folder 3 and all, right? Folder, I can give folder level access. If at all I give access here, you can see only 3 and 4. You cannot see 1 and 2. If at all I give access here, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4. If at all I give access here, you can see only the files under 4. That's the level of security that you get in ADLS, but you cannot get in blob. But in blob, though, you don't have folders only. That's a very different option. But even in multiple folders, you can have a folder level access. That's the option. Okay. And with respect to scalability and all, yes, it is very much scalable. You don't need to worry about the availability points of it. All that it is taken care. Okay. These are the major differences: security, analytics, which is big data workloads, and the namespace. Yeah. So now let's talk about one more scenario of table, right? So now here you get to see something called table storage. So what is a table storage, right? So far we spoke about blobs, right? So this is table storage. Is you can assume it's like a semi-structured database, right? Table storage is something like a semi-structured database. How is that? We'll see that in live, right? So if at all you wanted to play around it, there is something called storage browser. Click on this browser. You go to tables. Yeah, let's try to create a table. Uh, I'll say PrepG employees. Let's assume it's a big table. I'll just say PrepG. So I've created a table. Yeah. So this table has few fields by default: partition key and row key, which I will talk about it. But let's try to add some details in this table. Like for example, add entity. Okay. So I will say, let's assume like PrepG is a very big organization where it has many teams, and each and every team they have good amount of people, right? So now I'm choosing what is a partition key. I'll come to it, but assume partition key is like a team name. So I'll say HR team. Row key is like an ID of that particular folks in that team. So I'll say one. I'll add property. I'll say the properties name, and I'll say name as age. I'll say as 31. Place I will say as India. Okay. So I've entered the details of a person one. Now I'll insert this. Now I'll try to insert one more value. So now I'll say partition key is HR, and I'm trying to insert the second employee details, which is 2, and the name is BBB, and I'll say the he's 29 and he's from US. Again, I'll add it. Okay. Now I'll add one more entity. Now this time I'll say this particular person is from the sales table, and I'll say row key as 1. The name is CCC. The place is 41. Africa. And now this time I'll add one more value, and I'll say salary. I'll say 100 USD. Now, this is a major thing that you need to keep in mind. Here I'm trying to change the schema. I'm trying to insert a new column, and I click insert. You see this? The previous values have an empty. There's no data, but still it is capable of adding new data. Okay. That's the first concept of semi-structured. Schema can change at any point of time. Okay. The second thing that I wanted to focus is this partition key and the row key, right? What is this partition key and the row key? Let's try to understand. The concept of partition is something. You take an example of an organization where it has different teams or whatever. So let's say this is HR team, sales team, this is marketing team, this is QA team. Let's assume, right? So now, previously, I didn't do any partitions. Previously, the table was just plain. I was putting all information into this. When I say that, I have HR table, HR information in this table, sales information in this table, marketing information, QA table, QA person information, everything. Now imagine I wanted to fetch something from this table, like select star from PrepG table, where party where team name is HR. So what it does, it goes into this table, it scans the elements, and it will pick the information which is related to HR. Data storing and all is fine. I'm only talking about the performance of this operation when I try to fetch the data. It is trying to do an index scan, is what they say. It is scanning the entire database and gets the element which is related to HR. But here, when I try to divide the entire database into partitions, whenever I try to insert any data with respect to HR, it does not take much time. It does not want it to know where I need to go. The moment it knows this is a partition key of HR, it comes and it sits here. At any point of time, if at all you try to retrieve the data where partition key equal to HR, it will directly come here to fetch the data, right? That's where the partition plays a very key role, right? Correct. So imagine, like, try to analyze in such a way that you go to a place to purchase something. All electronic gadgets are at one place. All grocery items are at one place. So how much time it will save for you, right? Not just time. Imagine how organized it is. Whereas if at all items are at one place, you spend a lot of time to get what you want. Too many people you need to talk unnecessarily, all that stuff, right? So partition is okay. So where fetching the data happens at a very faster rate, because here it is not doing scanning. It is not scanning each and every field in a table. It knows where the data is available. It is going to that bucket and it is just picking the data from this bucket. Right? So performance plays a very important role in this partition key. That's one thing you need to remember. Then what is a row key? Row key is a unique identifier in that partition. Then what is a unique identifier in the table? The combination of a partition key plus row key is a unique identifier. When I say that, currently there is a HR and one which has a combination in this table. If at all I try to insert one more HR and one in the table, it won't accept. Okay. So now, having said that, if I try to add one more HR and one, you see this, fail to add entity HR1, the specified entity already exists. So that combination is a unique key for the table storage.